7 counselors. Eight counselors.
Is Lynn's sound a little fuzzy, or is that just me hearing it differently?
I think you have fuzzy ears.
I think it's just you, Paul.
Okay.
It sounds pretty clear to me.
Okay.
No comment. There's Jennifer. That's 9 counselors and 1 school committee member. Hi, Anika. Kathy.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hey, Anika.
There's Michelle. That makes 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
10.
I have
Thank
10.
you. 10, thank you.
We're looking for Shalini, Pam, and Alicia.
Yeah, Pam won't be here. And I did not hear back from Alicia. And there is our other school committee member. Hi, Irv.
Lynn, it's 6:30. Is it okay to open to the public?
Please do.
And would you like me to begin recording, or do you want to hang on?
Now that Shalini is here, I would like you to begin recording as soon as the audience begins to come in. Right now.
Just giving it a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, I am
Recording in
We're
progress.
recording now. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. It is August 28th, 2023. This is a special meeting of the Town Council and the remaining members of the Amherst School Committee. The open meeting law has been extended. This allows us to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of either body physically present at a meeting location, while providing the public with adequate alternative access to the meeting. This meeting is accessible in real time via Zoom, by phone, and as a live broadcast on Amherst Media Channel 9 and through their live stream. We are not, however, in the town room tonight. Given that we have a quorum of the council present, I'm calling the August 28th, 2023 Town Council meeting to order at 6:32. I will call upon each counselor by name at that time. You should unmute your mic and say present. This will indicate that we can hear you and you can hear us. Please remember to mute your mic after saying present. Shalini Balmil.
Present.
Pat DeAngelis.
Present.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Present.
Lynn Griesmer is present. Mandy Johanneke.
Present.
Anika Lopes.
Present.
Michelle Miller.
Present.
Dorothy Pam.
Here.
Pam Rooney, I believe, has informed me that she will be absent. Kathy Shane.
I'm here.
Andy Steinberg.
Present.
Jennifer Taub.
Present.
Alicia Walker.
Here.
At this time, we'd also like to welcome the 2 remaining Amherst School Committee members to this meeting. While I call your name, please unmute your mic and indicate that you can hear us, and we will know then that we can hear you. Irv Rhodes.
Irv Rose is here.
Jennifer Shao.
I am here.
And Jennifer, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, thank you for asking.
Thank you. This meeting was originally posted as a joint meeting of the Amherst School Committee because at the time of the posting, there was still a quorum of the 5 members of the committee. There, however, is no longer a quorum of the Amherst School Committee due to resignations of 3 members. I have not asked the committee to be called to order because at present, they don't have a quorum and therefore they cannot be called to order. They cannot meet and they cannot take action. And right there should give you a sense of the urgency of our job tonight. So, however, we welcome their full participation and their thoughts in this discussion. And should we come to any vote, I will not ask them to vote, but I will just ask them if they would concur. Okay. There's no chat room for this meeting. If you have technical issues, please let Athena and me know. To make a comment, to ask a question, please click the raise hand button. If technical difficulties arise as a result of utilizing Zoom, we will decide how to address the situation. Discussion may be suspended while we address technical issues, and the minutes will note if a disconnection occurred. I will be monitoring counselors and school committee members' connections, and if necessary, we will pause the meeting until you are reconnected. There is no public comment at this meeting, and there is no change in the order of the agenda posted. At this point, the only announcement I'm going to make is that the next meeting of the Town Council is September 11th, 2023 at 6:30. With that, we're going to go along to our one agenda item for the evening, and it is to discuss how we plan to proceed, how we would like to proceed with school committee vacancies. So each of you has, and it is in the packet, a draft memo with 4 attachments. Amherst Home Rule Charter, Section 4.1C, and Mass General Law, Chapter 43, Section 36, requires that the town council, working jointly with the remaining members of the Amherst School Committee, must initiate the process to fill the vacancies. And we have to do so within 45 days of the resignations. The process outlined in this memo was adapted from the process used by the town council and the school committee in March and April of 2020, when a school committee member resigned. And that process was originally used by the select board. Our goal tonight is to review the process, the timeline, and the vacancy notice. The follow-up to this is to release a vacancy announcement tomorrow, if at all possible. So with that, I'm going to ask that we go in order of the items that are in the memo, and we will be glad to put them up on the screen. But basically, the first one is the process, and I'm seeking questions, comments, suggested changes, etc. Please use your raise hand function. Jennifer.
On the second page of the proposed process, the 4th bullet point, it says at least 3 days prior to the meeting, the town council president or designee provides all candidates, etc. But according to the timeline, it's two business days. As far as I can tell, it's 9/22 and 9/26, which is a Friday and a Tuesday. So just like, they should be consistent.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I have 2 more things about.
Please go ahead.
So, still on that page, which is page 4 of the document, at a subsequent meeting or after, so I know you have 2 meetings scheduled. You have 1 meeting and then a second meeting in case it's needed. How will it be determined if the second meeting is needed?
It will be determined as we finish the first meeting, whether it's reasonable to finish that night, unless in advance we have so many candidates that we decide in advance we need 2 meetings.
And is reasonableness like just the time?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Well,
question.
you said, is it reasonable to continue that night, or is to go to the second night? And is the reasonableness just regarding like what time it is or how long it has taken? Like what factors will be used to determine if that second meeting is needed?
it will be the reasonableness and how late we might go. I will say the last time we used this process, we did not go. We did everything in one night. We
Okay.
did interviews, we took a break, we had a discussion, and we voted.
Okay, so my last thing is, voting will be by roll call vote, the last bullet point on that page. And then each person will say, asking each their first choice, but we have 3 seats. So like, how actually will the voting go? Will each person say 3 names? Will you do it one at a time? Just, I think that needs to be clarified.
That is a conversation that Athena and I have been having since, I think, Thursday, maybe Friday. And I would like to hear people's thoughts on it. But one of the options is when each of the 15 people that will be voting are called upon, they name their top 3 choices. And then we do some level of calculation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so I think it makes sense for someone to say 3 names. It'll be more complicated for Athena or whoever's keeping track of how people are voting. I think that makes sense. In a way that doesn't like say this is the order of my top 3. I don't know. It just seems like to say 3 names. And then to that point on the final, this is my final point on the last page, the winning candidates plural, and then this last bullet point, just those candidates should be plural.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Athena, did you get all of those?
No, are you making edits or would you like me to make edits? If you'd like me to do so, then I'll just need to see, I'll need to ask Jennifer to remind me where they are.
Let's make those edits because I'd like to complete the evening with as close to a finished document as possible.
Okay.
So first edit was, Jennifer, please just remind me. It was on,
At least 2 days prior to the meeting, as opposed to at least 3 days.
it was page 4.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So that should be 2 days, according to the timeline that's laid out.
Exactly. Thank you.
I th-
And then your next one
Wait,
was
wasn't it the Friday before?
Yeah, it's Friday to Tuesday, which is 2 business days, right?
business days. Yes.
Okay, and then the next one.
Well, in the last 2 bullet points, it should be candidates plural. Voting, the next page, sorry, last 2 bullet points of this. Okay. Here, yeah, winning candidates. And on in the next one, no candidates receive.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my other question was just how to describe the voting will be by roll call vote
Right.
in the previous page.
Right. Okay. I just want to remind people we're going to stick to the proposed process. So Mandy Jo, you're next.
Oh, so briefly, if I might just say first, Lynn, the roll call vote, so the final vote to fill the vacancies will be a roll call vote, but how the council and the remaining members take up indicating their choices and so on is a little bit different than the final vote, but it's still by roll call. Is that right? That's how we've discussed it.
Usually after we get done, we take one final vote where we name, in this case, all 3 candidates. And that is a vote to just tie everything up. So that would be the final vote, correct?
So in the past, in 2020, there was a sort of first round where members indicated their preference, and then there was a formal vote, and that was by roll call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to need to spell out the voting process a lot more in a lot more detail. So anything else? Athena? Mandy?
I think the voting process is clear. It's just that first round of how folks indicate their preferences and how we come to the 3 names if the council and members wish to vote them together or separately. That part is we're working on figuring out how to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Mandy Jo.
Thank you. Yeah, so following up on that one, I just think that means, based on what Jennifer said, the asking each their first choice needs to be highlighted because it needs fixed if we're going to be naming 3 in that first round. As we discuss that further. It was on page 4, the last bullet point where you were.
Mhm.
I'll start with page 3 once Athena does that. The 4th bullet point on page 3 that starts, the clerk of candidate statements are due to the town clerk. Our timeline and all has them being submitted to the clerk of the council, not the town clerk. And I think that's what we're going for. If we do that, though, there probably needs to be a sentence added into the either the 5th or the 6th bullet point. I don't know which one's more appropriate. That the clerk of the council will forward the statements of interest to the town clerk for the purposes of confirming eligibility, because it's the town clerk that has to confirm the eligibility. And so I think that, yeah, that bullet point might be the best spot to put something like that.
Yeah, and you're correct. It's basically, except for the confirming eligibility, the clerk that is mentioned here is in fact the clerk of the council.
Thank you for doing all the typing. And at the end of that, the clerk's letter, it says, would be transmitted to the council and relevant remaining members or relevant board. I would also suggest it be submitted to our clerk, to Athena too. So transmitted to the clerk of the town council, and the relevant board members. I just have 2 more things. Well, one more thing and then a couple of questions, and they all relate to they're all questions sort of. On the next page, page 4, the first bullet point is there's no chair of the school committee right now, as far as I know. And so I think we need to discuss how the develop interview questions bullet point is. I'm not sure it's exactly in conformance with the timeline below, which is that, but it says here that the president of the council and the chair of the other board would jointly develop the interview questions. So I think that needs reworded somehow, and we might be discussing that during this meeting as to how that's going to happen. The next bullet point has that the chair of the relevant board will also call a special meeting of that board.
That's only if possible.
You could add if possible or something like that. Yeah. Just to, I know normally that would be what happens. This is a rare circumstance when we're faced with so many resignations. And then the last bullet point, going back to what Jennifer was saying, if we're trying to get how this is going to happen correctly, or how this is going to happen and written down in a way that explains it as well as we can. I guess one of my questions would be, if on a first go round and every one of the 15 of us name 3 choices, one person that's named has more than eight or more votes, and no one else does, how do we write that in? I guess I would be under the assumption that that person is tentatively nominated as one of those 3, and we're now naming 2 people in subsequent rounds to try and get to 3 people that have the support of 8 or more members. But we haven't really talked about that. So do we have to go around and name 3 people until during one single round all 3 people receive at least 8 votes, or are we kind of doing it in this ranked choice sort of way where once someone crosses the threshold, that seat is sort of presumed now nominated, at least, because I know we do a formal vote, and then we're dealing with 2 or 1. So that's more of a question than a rewording at this point.
So that's the second. There's 2 issues on here so far that may need some additional discussion. One is the gathering of questions, and the other one is the voting process. Okay, Kathy.
I think we're all on the same page, so I was just gonna, I think the first one that Mandy flagged, we should just artfully rewrite it, that we know there were only 2 members of the school committee, so there is no chair. So, trying to work our way around that. You called the meeting today, Lynn, for tonight with the 2 members. So whatever process you did to get them in, this is the same one I would use. It's just my suggestion. So I don't know how we word that. And then on the, if depending on how many people we get applying, I think that suggestion of we each name 3 names with a 1, 2, 3, and if Athena can figure out some way of having an Excel spreadsheet, some easy way that she can do the 1, 2, 3s next to our name and next to their name, the 15 of us, so she could quickly tell us whether someone had number 1 listed next to their name with at least 8. I think it does make sense then go to now name your top 2, because in a 1 and a 2, because you may vary if everyone can see where I'm going. If my number 3 was someone else's number 1, you've removed my number 3, so just some way of getting to, now we do 2 and then we're down to the last one. It may be that we have a similar rank order. This is easier. So I'd like other people's thoughts, but I think that would go the most quickly. And the other comments I have, I just saw on those 2 things, I have some comments on the timeline, Lynn, so I'll just wait until we come back to the timeline.
Sticking to the process for now. Okay.
Yeah.
Andy?
Yes, you're addressing, of course, the points that I had previously thought about. One question that I have follows up on what Kathy said, however, and that is, I had assumed when I was thinking about it that each voter would cast 3 votes, and I analogized it to electing 3 counselors at large. You don't rank them, you vote for them. And so we're counting the number of people who received votes, but all votes are equal. So I just wanted to put that out because it is a different interpretation that I understood that was being made in Kathy's suggestion. And the other question that I have is that I may be misunderstanding, but I thought that there was a vice chair of the board of the school committee. And is that person still sitting? And if that person is still sitting, can that be a way of solving the problem? Otherwise, we have to come up with some other method of doing it, such as the longest serving or something else. But anyway, those are what my thoughts were.
Lynn, I just want to say, I agree with Andy. I didn't have to do a 1, 2, or 3. So I think we have those 2 options. So.
Okay, let me just put that aside. And Irv, you have your hand up, and I'm going to call on you because, in fact, Irv is the vice chair of the board. And Irv, would you like to speak to that role at this time?
Right. I mean, the policy says that the vice chair serves in the absence of the chair. Now, there's nothing that says, well, when you don't have a quorum, does that mean that the school committee does no longer exist? If it no longer exists, then there is no chair. However, if the quorum does not having a quorum does not define whether the school committee still exists, then the vice chair is the chair. I mean, and I have no answer to that.
Okay. Paul, I know that you've spent some time looking at this. Do you want to speak to that at this time?
Sure. So the position still exists. The school committee members still hold their position as school committee members. And I think Irv is accurate in the sense that, as the elected vice chair who serves in the stead of the chair, can serve in that function. Does
But
that
they
answer-
cannot call a meeting because
Right,
they don't have a quorum.
Right. You cannot, there is no committee at this point in time until there's a third member that's appointed.
Right.
So there's no meeting to be had.
But there are some functions, at least I think I remember you telling me this, Paul. There are some functions that Irv can still perform and then report on them publicly.
Yeah, and I think my understanding is that the school attorney will advise them on what functions the school committee the school vice chair can take on those things.
Some of those are practical matters as relates to the signing of warrants, which is an ongoing process that we are trying to work through now and get some answers to.
Right. But my
Lynn,
again,
if I may, the school committee does still exist, and Irv is still the chair. So when there is the acting chair, so when there is a quorum, Irv would act as chair once a quorum is reached. So but I think in this instance, it doesn't really make sense that it would be in consultation with the chair because there's just one other member.
right. So at this point, Athena has suggested this. Let me go on and get the rest of the comments, and then let's see if we have any reason to discuss either of these further or what we're going to do. Dorothy?
I think that both members should be serving on the committee for the reasons that have been stated. And, when there is what you call a committee, then Irv would be the head. Just as simple. I also don't like voting for top three choices. It sounds like ranked choice voting. We do not have that now. I think we should do separate votes. Thank you.
Michelle?
Thank you. So starting tonight, with tonight's meeting, it doesn't seem, other than electronically, that the public has a way to participate in this process. And perhaps that's the precedent that's been set previously. But I see that for all of the special meetings, there will be no public comment. There's no public comment tonight. So I'm just wondering what outlet or what channel, other than sending an email, the public may have in terms of participating in the process.
I am following precedent we've set in the past. This is in the, there is an election coming up. That is clearly the election in which the public expresses their preference. But for the purposes of this, which is an appointment that lasts a little over 3 months, in the past, we have not had public comment.
So just to follow up, Lynn, on the last time this happened, I know it was a much longer period of time that the person was serving, and you're saying at that time, even there was no public participation in the process.
That is correct. People can send us emails or do general public comment or anything else they want to do, but we did not have public comment at those meetings.
Okay. And so I'm just wondering if this grouping of people has any thoughts on whether creating a method for public participation is appropriate. I know that we have the ability to do so with a special meeting, and we also have the ability not to do so. So I'm just curious what other folks feel about that and whether it would be a benefit or make things more challenging.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy, you still have your hand up, and Jennifer, I'm going to skip and allow other people who have not spoken to speak next. So Anna, you're next.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had similar concerns to Michelle in terms of the way that we engage the public on this process. I know it's a short term and I know we have precedent, but we also only have one turn of precedent, right? I think that we also are in a place where we can always figure something out and do it better. And so I think that where I would like to advocate specifically for a special public comment or some other avenue of engagement would be prior to the development of the questions that we ask to the candidates. I think that that's one really important place where we can ensure that we are asking the questions that our community is feeling passionate about and concerned about. So while I think we all have a good grasp on that, and while I hope and believe our constituents know how to reach us, I think that that would especially be a point where we would seek out and possibly have a special public comment period. And then I think you said we were going to talk about the voting process later. I do think it's going to need to be very clearly spelled out. And I do think that we have the possibility to go around in circles for a long time if we only vote one candidate at a time and they don't possibly get a majority. So for me, the only kind of logical way to do it is doing three at a time and then going back through kind of doing second rounds if candidates don't get the majority votes, which I think gets to my question, which was about that last bullet point. And I think, Mandy, you maybe asked this or clarified it down a little bit more. The last one, that highlighted one. I just want to make sure that it's clear that if one candidate does get the majority and the other two don't, we're still not taking them out of the process. And so phrasing that so that we can make sure we're not accidentally, I don't know, the wordsmithing of it, I think needs to be done. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, you've not spoken?
Yes, I just wanted to, I really like Anna's suggestion about a way to engage the public by giving them an opportunity to suggest questions. Because although last time in 2020, they still, the selected candidate was there for a long time, even though who's selected in this process is only there maybe 12 or 13 weeks, because we already have candidates who are running for the school board. It becomes very political because one or more possibly of the candidates we vote for will also be candidates on the next election and in November. And even though they wouldn't be on the ballot as an incumbent, it gives them a certain exposure. So I think it's even in some ways, it's at least as critical a decision as in 2020, even though the selected candidate was going to serve longer in 2020, because it's just so political now. So I think we do, owe the public an opportunity to weigh in some way. Thanks.
Anika?
Yes, I was going to hold, but seeing as we were talking about additions or what may not be seen, and please direct me if I'm just missing it. So I have also a question of process, a little less political than as refers to the very short time period that we have here. And then even more so the time period that whomever the new school committee members would be coming into with a lot going on, certainly not lame duck season. So my question is around what for, it's also fellow counselors and Irv and Jennifer as well. What does the council need to do in regards to onboarding or prep to help the incoming committee members really ensure that they have all the tools to be successful? What can we do to help? Is there a period of time, since this would be such a short transition, that there would really be significant time to ensure that everyone is really up to date, and again having everything that they need to be successful within these roles for a short but certainly period of high stakes.
Okay. Herb, you've not asked questions, and so then I'm going to go to you and then back to Jennifer.
I'm just wanting to respond to Anika, is that in our rules and how we operate as a school committee, there is a requirement of doing an onboarding process for new members, and we definitely will put that into play.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And could I just respond? Thank you for that. And just please, I just would be very interested to know if there's anything we as counselors can do in our role to help with that. Thank
Right.
you.
I mean, yeah, definitely will let you know that.
Thank you. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to encourage the town council to have a public comment period when it comes to deciding which candidates to select. I'm neutral on whether I think there should be public comment on the questions. That's I can go either way on that. But this is an important decision that's coming before the town council and the remaining school committee members. And we, our town's practice is to receive public comment on important decisions before we make them. So I would encourage you to have public comment at the meeting, before the meeting, or whatever, at the meeting where this decision, the first meeting where this decision will be made. It's true that these three people are only going to be serving for a short time, but they probably will be involved in like setting up the superintendent search. Probably, I mean, that's yet to be decided, and that's a really important role. So I think it's a short period of time, but it's really important. It's an important period of time. And I think this is an important decision, and I would encourage you to have public comment. And then my second thing is just going back to the voting process. I agree with what I think Andy said, that this is not ranked choice voting. It should not be implemented as ranked choice voting. What I was trying to say earlier is that it seems the most efficient thing to do is to have each person in roll call say 3 names. And I would even say something like, each person should say 3 names, but the order that you say the names is not going to be interpreted as your preference order. Just say 3 names the way you get 3 votes when you, as Andy said, when you vote on for at-large counselor. And then Athena should be able to tabulate how many candidates got how many just votes. And that seems to be the most efficient way of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anika, you still have your hand up, but Kathy has not spoken, I don't think. Yes, you have, Kathy. Please go ahead. Kathy.
I'm only speaking to the issue of public comments. I very much like the idea at the questions, the formation of the questions, last time, we have a set of the old questions, and when I looked at them, I'd want to redo them, but I'd really want to get a lot of input, including from everyone here, but because I think that will tease out what Jennifer is getting at. We need to have an interview process where each of the people who are interested say something, and then we're going to ask them a common set of questions. And last time around, we were inundated, Jennifer, with a vote for this person, vote for that person. We got hundreds of emails. It wasn't particularly helpful until you went through the interview process, because you didn't even know, in some cases, who the person was and what they were going to say when you talked to them. So we have to move so quickly on this. I think the questions are pretty critical, and Lynn has, in the current timeline, and I wasn't sure why, but she has 2 separate, sort of a draft set that we discuss and then a final set. But if we said we want some interest, if people saw the initial draft set that we come up with, they could respond to it, and then it could be changed. So I just want to speak to, I like the question stage to get good, solid questions. We'll probably be influencing the questions the league and others pose to these candidates. I mean, this is a funny time of year that we're going to, an odd time of year, not ha funny, time of year that we have to be conducting this process.
Andy?
Yeah, following up on what Kathy just said in the general discussion about public comment, I'm sort of in a quandary on it, but I think that I'm uncomfortable with the idea of having public comment, because we're all in a very strange situation, and I mean all being potential candidates applying, as well as members who are present today on because of their membership on a body, an elected body, current elected body. But this is coming at the time of the election, and I'm afraid that public comment for those people who are applicants and are candidates on the ballot, that it is creating a platform to lobby and make speeches on behalf of a person which are not just directed at the council, but are directed at the community at large and are become a campaign tool. And I don't know that I want to open up this meeting to that dynamic. I'm hopeful that we get a range of applicants that may include some people who are candidates, may include some former school committee members, may include some others who have interest or expertise. But we won't know until we get there. So we're trying to create a policy that works under any range of possibilities because we don't know. But I don't think that I want to see this process become a platform for campaigning in the November election for one of the elected school committee positions.
Okay. Are there any other comments at this time on this process? I'm going to go back, okay, to issues related to that we've identified here. One is the development of questions, which has now come up in two different ways. And the other one is the issue of voting. The issue of questions has come up in two different ways, including the possibility of public input. And I would also like to point out that there are numerous ways to obtain public input. And we can perhaps look at all of those as well. Jennifer, you're actually,
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead, Jennifer.
I'll be quick. When with questions like this, I always think, I ask myself, what is the most democratic thing to do? And in my opinion, the most democratic thing is to allow people to express their opinions. You know, we all are elected to represent the public, and I think the most democratic thing is to allow public comment. I don't think we should fear or try to minimize campaigning or whatever. I'm not really concerned with what Andy's concerned about. Thank you.
Mandy Jo?
I want to go back to that bullet point on page 4 that's about developing questions, but I also want to give my support to Andy's comments on public comments during the meeting. If we were to do public comments between, say, interviews and trying to make a selection or making a selection. Since we do not know who will apply, we have to be mindful of the fact that we are in open meetings, but also using town resources for these open meetings. And it's my understanding that candidates for election need to be given equal opportunity to use a town room or a municipal room for whatever if they are, but that in general, you're not allowed to use town resources for campaigning. So I think Andy's got a very good, a very valid concern that, you know, since we do not know who will apply and that there could be some people who apply for this that are going to be on the ballot in November, and maybe everyone who will be on the ballot for school committee in November will apply, but maybe some will not, for whatever reason. And if we're opening up that particular meeting and forum for public comment, but only on the candidates who have applied for filling the vacancy, and some of them are also on the ballot, it could potentially be construed an open public comment period about that you can only comment about the candidates that we're considering for the appointment. If it turns into campaigning in general, it could be construed as not giving all candidates on the ballot equal opportunity to use those resources. I don't know whether that's whether I'm thinking about it inaccurately or not from that legal point of view, but I think we need to give what Andy said a lot of credence and validity that it could present some problems for the town because of what's going on there. With the bullet point that is up here, the wording that I like Athena's with the input from the remaining members of the other board, but we also have these 2 meetings, and I think it's important to have the 2 meetings. And so I don't think this bullet point conforms with the timeline, is I guess what I'm going to say, because right now the timeline says remaining school committee members and counselors get questions to Lynn. We'll have on September 11th a discussion on those questions. They will be a draft. And then on September 18th, a final version will be produced based on that discussion on the 11th and maybe any other comments that come in. And I just don't think this bullet point right now comports with the timeline and what's done there. So I think it still needs some rewording because of that.
So let me see. I for the moment, I'd like to stay on the issue of the development of the questions. And let me see if, let me try something out and then see where we are. So prior to the meeting on the 11th, we could develop a mechanism online using the town's website for people to submit questions. And in addition to that, I could consult with, including counselors, okay? And I could consult with the 2 remaining members of the board, and we could come up with a set of preliminary questions that would come to the council on the 11th. Okay, that's a fast turnaround, but we don't have a choice. And then on the 11th, we can discuss those questions, and then possibly on the 18th, we would have a final set of questions. So that way we would seek broad input in the initial development of the questions, but not through public comment, but rather through a electronic mechanism using our website that we have used for many other options of input. And that's one option. And then trying to whittle it down so that, again, if you've got 10 candidates, you're not sitting there for gazillions of hours. I think we want to keep the number of questions down to a certain number and so forth. That, to me, that way you get a sense from the public about what they feel is most important in this interim. And at the same time, you get a sense from Jennifer and Irv, who are both very involved in this interim period and will be very involved and are much more aware of the processes that are going on. And all of them have input into what will be the most important things that could or will happen between the end of September and January 2nd. So that's just a suggestion. No suggestion of mine is ever sacred, so please take it for what it is. Andy.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, while we still have that bullet on the screen, I think there's a redundancy that's unnecessary because it says the president of the council with input from the remaining members of the other board, if any, and the chair of the other board in consultation with their respective members. It's sort of like it's picking up the same.
I just didn't delete the second part yet.
Twice.
Yeah, I think it was put there to just not to show it before we delete it. So we would now delete that.
Okay.
Okay, so again,
I don't think we can delete the in consultation with the respective members, because you delete that and you're not consulting with town councilors.
So what if we just change this to town council?
is it
Prior to the meeting, the town council with input from the remaining members of the other board, if any, will jointly develop interview questions.
And that happens on both the
The
11th
18th,
and the 18th.
right, yeah.
Michelle, you have a comment?
Just coming back to the public comment, so there are 2 regular meetings prior to the meeting, the special meeting, and I think our rules allow for during general public comment for folks to comment on anything that's within the purview of the council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so there would be an opportunity twice for folks who wanted to comment during those regular meetings.
How do people feel about setting something up on the town? I'm blanking on the name of the other website we use when we go for questions.
Engage Amherst.
Engage Amherst. Thank you so much. If setting something up on Engage Amherst where the public could submit questions prior to the 5th of the month, or maybe even a little later. Does that satisfy the idea of having more public input into the questions? Mandy Jo?
It sounds like a good idea, but I caution us. I would ask Paul whether he believes Brianna, who generally has done all of the setting up for all Engage Amherst stuff and monitoring much of it, has the capacity to do that in such a short period of time, given when she is leaving.
Good question. Andy?
Yeah, so we're flipping back and forth because of the order, but getting back to that bullet, I think that the better wording would have been to go the other way as far as what was being eliminated. So it would be prior to the meeting, the president of the town council and the chair of the other board in consultation with their respective members will develop interview questions. And
I just that can be done. I'm just trying to make sure it can be done just the way I will send something out to you. I will ask you not to reply all, or I'll ask you to send things to Athena, and we'll compile all of it and then come up with a proposed process. So I want to be as transparent as possible, however. Dorothy.
I don't think that an electronic bulletin board serves as sufficient public comment. I think that what Michelle mentioned sounded reasonable, that people could comment during regular town council meetings. Thank you.
Paul, you put your hand up, so I'm going to call on you.
Yeah, I do have concerns about us being able to support the Engage Amherst platform at this point in time with Brianna's departure. So I would really have to look into that, see if we could support that before offering it.
Okay. So Pat, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't, given that we might not be able to do the Engage Amherst, I like putting that aside. I like the idea that the public could submit questions. And I also heard you, Lynn, initially when you were talking about saying counselors could submit their questions there too. And so could the 2 members of the school board. I think that sort of levels the playing field between the public and the boards, the committees. The other thing that it seems to me is we're not talking about public comment when we're creating the questions. That's a separate process. Michelle came up with a good idea for public comment, but the question development, we need input from the public and the 2 boards. And we need to move from there, but we don't need public comment on those questions. That's a different thing.
Right. So what's not stated here is that there would be a process by which I would receive suggested questions. Boy, this is getting complicated, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I do have other things to do besides run meetings. Jennifer.
Yeah, that was just my question. If we couldn't use the Engage Amherst, what would be the process for?
One process could be to use the general public comment feature that we already have. That's the only other one that I can think of that captures it all and doesn't rely on an individual, me particularly having to make sure I've caught every email that is sent. That is an impossible task. It's as impossible as whatever.
Right. So is the way we would get word out to the public by through counselors, letting their constituent mailing lists?
Yeah.
Inviting them. Yeah.
Certainly one of the ways. We can also post something, post something on the town's bulletin board. If there are questions you would like to see included, no promises made, you would like to see included, please submit that as general public comment, something like that. Mandy Jo, I feel like I'm digging a hole that is just not doable, but I just want to be honest about that.
So I guess I'm still trying to figure out what the bullet point still doesn't, I don't like the wording that was originally there. I guess meeting prior to which meeting? I think we're referring to the special meeting where we do the interviews in this bullet point, but I'm not sure, right? And so I think that's what part of my confusion is. Someone has to, by September 11th, present the council according to the next attachment B or whatever, or C or wherever the timeline is, present the council with a list of proposed questions or preliminary questions. And so we have a couple of questions to figure out, or decisions to make, or consensus to reach, which is who presents the council, who's gathering those questions and producing that document. And then the next question is, will the council be voting on the final list of questions? Right now in on the way the council uses its policy for recommending ZBA, planning board, and finance committee, the committees themselves actually adopt a set of interview questions. So the question I would have is, are we planning on September 18th as a council with input? Because I know, unfortunately, the 2 school committee members cannot vote, adopting a set of questions, or is the way this bullet point right now reads, that original language, is that the president would basically just decide what the questions were once receiving the input. And I'm not comfortable with that. So I think we need to come up with a consensus on, is on September 18th, the council voting to adopt a set of questions, and who by September 11th is drafting the preliminary set of questions to be discussed on September 11th before the final questions are the final proposed list is brought back on September 18th. I support finding a way for the public to give input in what those questions could be. One way of, although then you get, as I've done as a chair, you might end up with 4 pages, or for this, we might end up with 10 or 11 or more pages of questions. And someone's going to have to present that. Many of them will come in with very similar ideas and all. And so I would support creating a document that has every question submitted to the council by counselors, by remaining members of the school committee, by the public, but then someone needs to essentially condense that into a logical number of questions to present to the council too, so that there'd be 2 documents on September 11th is how I'm foreseeing it. One that has all of them that were submitted, and one that is the draft preliminary set of questions, whether it be 7, 8, 9, 10, figure out that number.
Okay, so Major Joe, first of all, this has to be done prior to the interviews. It has to be done and voted on by the council with some comment or whatever from the two remaining members. So let's back it up from the 18th. The 18th is when we have to finalize these, because our process is to make those questions public, and to make those questions public to the public, to the candidates, to the school committee members, and to the council. The second thing is that, I mean, having done research using content analysis, there is a way to condense even 11 pages of questions. It's not fun, but there is a way to do it using content analysis and grouping and coming up with a way to come up with questions. I need to think about the best way to get that done. I really have to say that is not a small task. It is a huge task. And it's not a task that we can't assign it to a committee. No committee has that kind of time. So, but without question, I believe that the council and the two remaining members of the school committee need to be looking at a draft on the 11th and adopting a draft of adopting the questions on the 18th. So that's firm. How we get to those questions is still the question. Well, it is the question. Jennifer.
So I'm hearing Lynn say that this is getting really complex, and from what I'm hearing, like it sounds like I don't need to over-engineer the process of coming up with a list of questions. I'm going to maintain that, first of all, I don't think this body needs to. Well, maybe this body will need to vote to approve the questions. I think this needs to be simplified, as Lynn said. I think that the decision before this body, the most important decision, is choosing the appointees. That's my priority in getting input from the public. I don't really think we necessarily need to prioritize input from the public on the questions. I mean, you know, we were elected to serve the public, and every other decision that this body, that the two bodies make, we come up with information, we get input from the public on what our decision should be, and then we make the decision. I think we can simplify this by having Lynn as the president and Irv as the vice chair take input by September 5th, have the two of you come up with both of what you know of the job and the town, come up with a proposed list of questions. I don't need to see every question that everyone has submitted. I don't want to see all of that. You two come up with a proposed list of questions, present it to us on September 11th. We'll discuss it. I'm going to say at that September 11th meeting, there should be public comment the way there is at every town council meeting, so that the public can comment on the questions then. And then we talk about September 11th, we vote on it the 18th. Like, I think that we can streamline this a lot by just empowering the president and the vice chair to come up with a draft list of questions.
Thank you. Dorothy?
I agree with a lot what Jennifer said. I think there's been talk as if these questions are magic. They are not. These questions the questions that are needed for this job have been asked again and again, and there's records, they're written down. So I really, the idea that we're going to take all this time thrashing around for the magic questions is to me a waste of time, and I don't really want to do it. So I suggest that we go and find the questions that have been asked in the past, and that the committee of two that Jennifer suggested look at them, and that town council members be asked after they see the list if they want to submit an additional question. And that should be pretty quick. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle?
I'd like to further support that. And I've seen, Lynn, you work magic, if that's a word we're using, to condense and group questions. And I think that if there's a missing question, if there's an error, it will be known somehow. A counselor or somebody on the school committee that's remaining, or a public person will let it be known. So I'm not as concerned about that. And Jennifer, I think you said, so September 11th is a meeting of the council. And so I think then public comment would be part of that process as well.
And
you.
one of the things we may consider is if we're going to invite the two other remaining members of the school committee on the 11th, is we may call a special meeting in which there is public comment before our regular meeting. I'm trying to make sure that the town council, with all of this on its plate, continues to attend to its other business. And that's important for us. Irv?
So in terms of developing the questions, the reason for having public input on that is if that is a value of the council to have public input on this particular issue, then you should carry through on that value by asking for public input to develop those questions. But that's all the value. That's your values that you have to decide is that a value. In terms of practicality, the questions that have been asked before, those can be definitely used and utilized and be as good as any of the questions are going to come. The other thing is, it really doesn't matter if you go out and say, we want public input, and so we want you to suggest questions. So send them in to us. I can assure you that ChatGPT can do a great job of reducing those questions down to what we need.
I was looking for a place to apply this. Now I've seen one.
Yes, I can tell you from experience, recent, they're taking mounds of data and input and putting into ChatGPT to reduce to a set of questions, principles, topics, etc. It is amazingly good at.
Interesting. Alicia.
Thank you, Lynn. I actually don't disagree with Irv. I think that could work, but I originally was going to say that I think a process similar to what Dorothy described would work, and that we have you all draft up the questions and then have another meeting where if we have questions that we feel strongly about that were forgotten, that we have those added. And I do also agree with Michelle's suggestion in that we should still have a public comment period after that.
Shalini, I'm going to come to that issue in a minute. Alicia, any other comments on question development?
I agree with I agree that we need to understand what is important for our residents. We kind of have a sense of what's on their minds, but I'm with the people who are saying we need to ask people and get input about questions that we should be asking. And I also want to acknowledge what Andy said, that by allowing public comment, so we can have public comment generally, but not at the point of where we are discussing the specific candidates, because of what Andy said, that if some of the people who are running for school committee in fall are, I'm just saying that, repeating this in case it was missed, but this is how I'm thinking about it, that if people are running in November and they are here, and then we have public comment promoting those people, and we're just, it is highlighting and giving them extra publicity that's not going to be democratic and fair to all the candidates that are running. So I think it's very important to hear our public and residents, what do they want from the next round of, or at least for this interim. This is a very important role they're going to be playing. So what are the questions that they want to have answered? And then they have elected us and trust us that based on what's on their mind, we're going to have a discussion and make the selection that is best.
Okay.
So that would be
I would like to edit the sentence that is below. Prior to the first discussion of the questions, No, not the interview questions. Yes, thank you. At a joint meeting of the town council and the remaining members. Okay, and then take the word interviews out, but leave a comma. The president of the town council and the chair of the other board, in consultation with their respective members and in consideration of public input, will jointly develop a first draft of interview questions. We may need to address what happens then, which would be at the second council, at the second discussion of the council, at the second discussion of the interview questions at a joint meeting of the town council and the remaining members. Members of the other board, a vote will be taken as to the final set of questions or something like that. It's wordsmithing is always welcome. Mandy Jo, you have your hand up.
So I hate to throw a wrench in that wording.
Why? I don't care.
Develop interview questions. When there were two separate boards, you could potentially argue that maybe they were doing it for their own separate meetings. But I would like Athena's input on whether that wording creates a subcommittee that requires compliance with open meeting law.
Meeting where you have the town council meeting with
jointly, no, the president of the council and the chair of the other board will jointly develop interview questions. Normally we say if you assign the task to more than one person, you've had a subcommittee. In the past, it's always been the two chairs and you've been having a joint meeting. So you could argue that each chair is developing the questions for their own separate meeting. But we're in this weird situation where there isn't a separate meeting for one of the bodies.
Athena, thoughts?
It sounds like what you're trying to achieve is that you will compile the interview questions from counselors and remaining members of the school committee with public input and present them to the council and remaining members of the school committee on the 11th, and then the council will adopt them on the 18th. Is that correct?
So I think what we need to do is say, prior to the first discussion of the interview questions at a meeting of the town council remaining members of the board, the president of the town council with input from the remaining members of the other board. So in other words, Irv and I will not meet.
You're going to compile questions with input from counselors, the remaining members of the board, and in consideration of members.
Input. That's correct.
Right.
So in
Okay,
other words,
so
we're going to
prior
take
to the
what Mandy Jo's concerned about. We're going to take
hang
out
on.
Did we lose audio?
no.
No, I'm just typing.
Just typing. We're just amazingly quiet, Irv.
Yes, astonishingly so.
Now, the only thing is it should be There you go. Of the other board. Of the board.
Does that,
I believe that captures it, but I'm looking for others' input. Irv, you have your hand up.
I really appreciate all of this. And I also wish people to understand that when this process is over, we will be into the budget making process for the Amherst schools. And that the uniqueness of the situation is that the people who will be dealing with the budget for the Amherst schools, the school committee, Amherst School Committee, all 5 of us could be there in January, or none of us could be there in January. And there could be a completely different group of people there.
Right.
And so I just want people to understand and appreciate the uniqueness of this situation and the challenges that the Amherst School Committee is facing and will be facing going forward.
So Irv, Jennifer, do you have a comment on this particular item? Please go ahead.
It seems like that this new text seems to remove the vice chair of the school committee from involvement in compiling the interview questions.
It doesn't remove them. It has them providing input, like as does it also include you giving input, but it avoids the issue of whether or not we have created a committee that then needs to meet in public. That's what we're trying.
This is Mandy Jo's concern about creating a committee of 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't love it.
Well, I don't love a lot of things, but I'm trying to also get to a process where we can live with it. Mandy Jo?
None of us generally love it, Jennifer, but I want to say what we normally say in council committee meetings is nothing in this wording prevents the president of the council from consulting with anyone she chooses before she presents the document to the council. So it just ensures that a formal subcommittee is not created.
Right. So I'd like to move on to the other issue, and that is the issue. I want to actually take a segue to the issue of public comment. And I also was on the council at the time we replaced the last school committee member. It was a very different circumstance. The election of the future committee was way in the future. I want to point out to the 2 people who are presently on the school committee who are with us tonight. First of all, thank you for hanging in there. But I also want to point out that if we start having people make public comment about the candidates as we're interviewing them, it is disadvantaging you as a candidate for office, because we are not going to interview you that night. And right there creates an uneven playing field, because you as candidates for office, since both of you have taken out papers, I'm aware that's your intention, would be disadvantaged because we wouldn't interview you. And so I really hesitate when we have a general election for offices across 5 different boards and or positions coming up soon after this, to create an uneven playing field for you and for any candidate who decides not to apply for the interim position for whatever reason. So it's something I just felt I needed to say. Dorothy.
I think we've gone around the room now. We were going to have public comment on questions. Now we're not going to have public comment on questions. I don't see, if you decide that two people is a committee, I don't see anything wrong with there being a meeting with public comment. We were going to allow public comment on questions, and now it's out of the question.
We are
I don't
still
like it putting the vice chair of the school committee out of any official role. So I just think that you're making things more complicated, not easier.
Dorothy, we are going to have public comment. We will have 2 council meetings at which we have public comment. Anybody can make public comment.
Then why can't you have the meeting that you originally put forward before Mandy said that would be a committee, and you can't have a committee if there's no public comment? I'm saying, okay, have a committee, have public comment. That's what I'm saying.
Are you suggesting Irv and I should meet as a committee, have public and have public comment, and the 2 of us sit there for 10 hours and listen to the public?
I doubt if there'll be very many people tuning in. I truly do. You think there's some magic in these questions? I mean,
I don't personally think there is magic in these questions.
So it's the public
But I am
comment.
also
What you brought up was public comment when candidates are being voted on. I totally agree with you. That would be not good.
The only place I have mentioned public comment. I have no problem with people coming to town council meetings, making public comment about anything they want to make public comment about. And we have 2 council meetings at which there will be public comment. So we're seeking public input to these questions. I think I mentioned earlier, we could use the general public comment form as a way of doing it. And that puts the burden on.
I'm expressing some concern over the fact that the town council, at least in my 5 years, I don't believe we normally choose school candidates. So not to have the existing vice president of the remaining counselors in an official role seems to be putting it in an off-balance situation. So I'm just in terms of what it looks like. So I think that's not a good move. That's my suggestion.
Okay. Jennifer.
So regarding public comment, I had originally thought there would be no public comment, like there was no public comment tonight. I thought there would be no public comment period in the meeting or meetings when in the 1 or 2 meetings when we vote on the appointees. But I think I'm hearing that they're going to be regularly scheduled town council meetings and there will be a public comment period at the beginning of no?
Yeah, let me clarify, Jennifer, okay? At the meeting in which we interview the candidates and discuss and vote, there will be no public comment. That is the plan at this point.
Okay.
However, between that meeting and now, the council has 2 regular meetings coming up, and we will have public comment at those meetings.
Okay, but I believe those meetings are both going to be before the list of candidates is finalized. So I want to encourage you to have public comment at the meeting when we will be voting to appoint the candidates. I hear people saying they're not in favor of that, but I want to encourage you to have public comment at the beginning. Maybe I don't think it needs to be like during the deliberation period. Like we don't need to ask questions and then have public comment and then deliberate. Just like have an open public comment session at the beginning of the meeting, the way you do for all town council meetings. That's what I would like to see the town council do. But I want to comment on what Lynn said about how it would benefit Irv and me as candidates to not have public comment about the appointees. I'm trying to wrap my head around that. I'm a little dumbstruck at the idea that we should make decisions based on what might help or harm us as candidates. I can't. I'm speechless that would even come up. That Lynn, you would suggest that we should make this decision to not have public comment because it would benefit us as candidates. That's completely inappropriate and possibly unethical. I'm really surprised that came up.
I think you misheard me, but that's okay. Pat.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the comment, and I may have misheard it too. I heard it differently than Jennifer, but it seems to me that Jennifer and Irv are on the school committee. And anything that happens publicly, whether they're involved in a council meeting or anything else, can benefit or harm their candidacy because they're running in November. They're incumbents. So I don't think that they should be kept out of things, or they're just a part of the school committee. And so it does seem to me that there is a concern about fairness that is misplaced. I think it's coming from a very good place, but I think it's misplaced.
Again, I think I was misheard, but go ahead. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, we're going around in circles on this question of public comment about the candidates. And I really think what it comes down to in large part, beside is an additional question, is whether there's, and Mandy had touched on this, whether there's a violation of campaign finance law. And I think that we really, before even considering a vote on this topic, I'm not saying discussion tonight, but before a vote on this topic, I think that we need to consult town attorney, and we possibly need to consult the Office of Campaign Finance, because there's what's happening if we do have public comment is we're allowing a certain level of politicking to take place with public resources, and that's flat illegal.
Thank you. Alicia?
Thank you, Lynn. So I would be in favor of having an additional public comment period during the selection phase, and I don't think I'm quite, like, I hear and understand the political aspect because it's so close to a campaign, to like an election season, and because some of the people who may place their name as someone interested may also be running for office. But regardless of whether or not we have a public comment period, those individuals will have this extra platform, if you say, because they will be answering the questions. Those questions will be made publicly available. They are already putting themselves on a different kind of display than candidates who might choose to not submit their name for this. So I don't think that that will be amplified anymore by having people come in and public comment and let us know how they feel. Maybe we can add some specifications in terms of when people public comment, they can't say, we want you to vote for this person in the election. But I think that's very different than having people public comment and say something along the lines of, based off of their answers to these questions, we would like this person placed in this specific role of the interim or the placeholder or whatever you call it. But I think that it's very different, and I would still be in favor of having another public comment period. And I think I'm looking at it in terms of what just happened when we needed an interim superintendent in the school committee level. I know that's a little bit different, but there was public comment after the questions were answered. And so that's why I'm not understanding why it would be different in this position if we can just indicate that we can't have people saying, vote for so-and-so in the upcoming election.
Anika?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to note it's 8 o'clock and just about, and while I know we're here for as long as it takes, I'm wondering if we could just get some clarity around what is and what is not allowed, just in terms of campaign regulations, so we know and we could have that guide the public comment. I think we're all on board and we all support as much engagement with the public as possible and hear what they want, but we also, this is extremely important, and I don't think we want to make mistakes based on what we individually think can or cannot happen or agree with. And so I'm hoping that if we can just get some clarity, we don't want to, eye ourselves into maybe having someone disqualified because we thought it was okay or wasn't okay. So, again, maybe some clarity just around that could facilitate and guide when we have the public comment in the event that we may need to have it as soon as possible. I mean, it may, from what we're hearing and don't have clarity to, it might be something that we need to have as soon as possible, maybe before we have submissions or before submissions are made public, if that's even possible at this point.
I think we can get clarity tomorrow. I don't think we can get clarity tonight. For one thing, the Office of Campaign Finance is not open. But I do agree that we need to get clarity on this particular question. Anna?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still a little stuck on how enabling public comment could lead to a campaign finance violation. We have public comment now. Candidates for office can make public comment now. I think I don't understand how that couldn't be a really, really slippery rabbit hole there. And I think that my second point is this is kind of one of the reasons why I had initially said where I would like to see public comment is when we generate the questions, because that is honestly, in my opinion, how we minimize politicking in this, if that's what we're seeking to do, because we're seeking input not on candidates, but on how we are looking at those candidates. When we seek comments on what people want us to be asking, on what people want us to be considering when we look at the candidates, it's not even about which candidates are there. It's about how we are approaching this task and how we're basing those decisions on answers, right? Making sure that we are asking everything that is important to our constituents. To me, that is the most important part of this, because it's not that it doesn't matter who the candidates are. Of course it matters who the candidates are, but the best way to understand who the best folks for this job are is to make sure that our questions are fully reflective of what our community needs. So, and that we're consistent in that ask. That's why I do think that the most important time to gather public comment is when we're generating the questions. What matters to you that you need us to ask as we go through this process? I'm really concerned about the discourse around public comment and politicking, and we have public comment now. People can do that now if they really want to. I'm a little lost on that one. So apologies if I'm missing some major source of information that would enlighten me there. Thanks. Oops, sorry.
Michelle?
I'm also feeling a little bit lost on that. So I appreciate your comments, Anna. But if there is any concern, and of course we'll only learn that through legal counsel, given that nomination papers are due on September 19th, I would imagine that nobody is considered maybe they are considered a candidate, but until those papers are submitted with the appropriate number of signatures, we don't have any real candidates, I think. So September 18th is a meeting that happens before that date where there will be general public comment available. So I do think it's worth looking into, but I also want to agree that it feels that I'm not quite sure I understand the way that election finances work enough to say that that would be something that we should hold with high concern.
Thank you. Irv?
The issue that you raised, Lynn, is real. It's a real, obviously, if we're having voting, for instance, there are two important times where public comment are going to be taken. One, at the question collection stage, and two, on the night and the evening where the votes are going to be taking place. Now, for the first one, in terms of question collection stage, that's a public comment is that would be no different than almost other meetings. However, on the evening when votes are going to be taken in terms of who is going to be on the school committee, and if you allow public comment, and I'm saying not saying whether you should or should not, but if you allow public comment, then what Lynn's saying is a possibility. That is, that there will be people who will be coming forth to make public comment who will be supporting those people who have applied for membership on the school committee, and therefore they would be promoting that person. If they are then promoting that person and any other numbers of people who there will be promoting, that would in effect disadvantage those people who are incumbents from that kind of exposure. That's what I understand Lynn to be saying. And is that something that should be a question that is considered? I consider it to be a fair question, and that it's an issue. And whether it is an issue that rises to a level of, wow, we are stifling the operation of democracy, I am not sure.
Thank you. Kathy?
I just am going to make a real quick comment. If people look at this schedule, we have very little time to do any of this. Lynn has tried to squeeze in. All of our questions are due 6 days from now, 7 days from now, September 5th, whatever we think should be asked. We're going to be meeting 6 days after that to get the draft of questions from whoever put input in, to discuss them again. Candidates are going to be sending us an SOI. They'll know tomorrow that they have to write something. And then we're going to meet on them 6 days later. I mean, this is because if we don't, we're going to miss the timeline to appoint for the Ben slot for each of these slots. We're under the gun to do this. So I think we are going to get public comments, and the questions we come up with will generate quite a few. And I think that should be the place where we get whatever we get, however we get it. And I want to assure you, last time around in 2020, we had a huge number of emails. We had emails coming in, and I was a new counselor. We had emails coming in for people that I didn't even know because they hadn't filed their statement of interest yet. I mean, it was really so we are going to be getting those from the people who are starting to campaign for particular candidates. We're going to get a lot of them. I don't think any of us have time for a really, really, really long meeting about specific candidates. So I think this question time, and there are 2 points, the 11th and the 18th, are going to be 2 entry points, including people can start sending Lynn questions now. Whoever is listening, that can start right now. I wrote up a draft of a few based on last time around, and that's about as far as I can get. So mine are going to be in already, but all of us need to step up to the plate if we have ideas, because we're in just a totally different world than we should ever have hoped to be or expected to be. And so I just want to stress how short the timeline is.
Let me try to summarize where I think we are. Essentially, we have agreed to the change here in terms of the development of questions. Essentially, we may not like it completely, but I will try, in addition to providing questions, I will try to have a summary of the gazillions of input and people I've talked to, or types of people. The second thing is we will consult with the campaign finance, the Department of Campaign Finance, and also our town attorney as to the legality around the issue of public comment specifically related to the night of the interviews. And the third thing is, and I'm going to suggest that Athena and I will discuss various options for voting, and we will bring that back to the meeting on the 11th. Does that help people conclude this section so we can move on to the next? Jennifer.
So you're going to consult with counsel and the Office of Campaign and Public Finance, even though I don't think it's necessary, but about whether it's problematic at all to have public comment. And then at the September 11th meeting, are we going to decide then whether there will be public comment at the meeting at which we vote?
This September 11th is not the meeting at which we vote.
Yes.
The meeting at which we vote is not until the 26th.
And at the September 11th meeting, will we be deciding whether or not to have public comment at the meeting in which we vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anika, you have your hand up, but I think it's left up from before. Okay. Thank you. All right. Then we're going to move on to the timeline and make any adjustments to the timeline based on what is here. Are there questions and comments on the timeline? Jennifer, you have your hand up.
The at this page 7, I believe the deadline to fill the Harrington vacancy is October 2nd, according to my counting, 45 days since the vacancy. I could be wrong because if you earlier it said Harrington submitted his resignation 6 days prior to McDonald, so it makes sense that the date is 6 days prior. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it is like an important date because it's the first deadline. But maybe we can confirm that.
And we'll check those dates again. But the town clerk received the resignation on Friday the 18th. Am I correct, Paul? That's.
Oh, I
wrote-
see. But it's effective of August 21st, which is only 3 days. Okay, it's the effective date versus the resignation date. Thank you.
It was effective the 21st. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Mandy Jo.
Just one one comment on page 6. The SOIs, it's going to be like the third to last bullet point, that Wednesday, September 20th, 4 p.m. statements of interest are due. Somewhere in there, we need to indicate that the clerk forwards all statements of interest to the town clerk for the purposes of confirming eligibility.
Yes. So right after she receives that, we'll insert a bullet there that says the clerk of the town council, Wednesday, September 20th, 2023, 4:00 p.m. or 4:05 p.m. EDT, Eastern Daylight Time. The clerk of the town council forwards all statements of interest to the town clerk. Does that take care of it?
I used a semicolon, just.
Thank you.
I'll do that as they come in, but I think that's fine.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the timeline? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to move to the actual advertisement. It's was drafted. There might be changes, but I'm looking for comments specifically as it relates to page 8 and 9. Jennifer.
At the bottom of page 8, where it says the new Amherst School Committee members will also serve on, I don't think it, and it ends with the BCG. I don't think it's necessary to specifically call out the BCG because there are several subcommittees that school committee members may sit on. So I might change that to and other school committee subcommittees instead of and on the Town of Amherst Budget Coordinating Group.
Okay, I think that's a very good suggestion. We kind of deliberated over that. Depending on the time of the year, they might also serve on JCPC, but JCPC doesn't meet until after the first of the year. So are you?
And I have another comment on page 9.
Yeah. All right.
So in the second paragraph there, interested in serving out the remaining term on the school committee and the relevant skills and experiences they will bring to the body. So like having relevant skills and experiences is actually not a requirement to be a school committee member. The only requirement is getting enough votes and being a registered voter. So someone may want to share their relevant skills and experiences, but I don't think we need to ask them to put it in the letter. I would propose changing it to and why they should be selected for the appointment. instead of and the relevant skills and experiences, because then someone who has relevant skills and experiences can share that. But really, we want to hear like, why should it be you? That's it. Thank you.
Okay, if there's any disagreement with those changes, please raise your hand. But meantime, I'm going on to Mandy Jo.
Yeah, just a couple. It's a special circumstance, and I know we took this from the prior one where there were joint meetings, but because we don't have a quorum of the school committee, I suggest maybe we get rid of the reference to joint meetings and just refer them to special meetings. There's 2 in the first bolded paragraph on page 8. There's another one on the second bolded paragraph. And then there's one in the second to last paragraph on page 9.
Yeah, very good.
And as Athena finds them, no, I don't think there's any in that paragraph. I think the only other one, Athena, is on page 9, the very last big paragraph.
Right before contact.
On the Friday, yeah, those special joint meetings. In the second bolded paragraph on page 8, it references just broadcast the meeting on live on channel 9. I would put a parentheses S in there in case we have a second special meeting. And then the final one again refers to this who's collecting and submitting to the clerk. So it's the second full paragraph on page 9 that starts with the statements of interest once submitted. So they're being submitted to the town clerk of the council, and then it says once submitted, the town clerk will confirm. I suggest once submitted, the clerk of the council will request the town clerk confirm a candidate's eligibility.
Yeah, good changes.
And I think you just get rid of that though. And that's it from me.
Okay, Jennifer?
Sorry, one more thing on page 9. The second to last paragraph, statements of interest will be available to the public on the town website by September 22nd, which is stated earlier in the timeline. Just so that people will know on what date they can go look and see who the candidates are. It's on page.
Yeah. So, I mean, on page 6, we do say that they'll be verified, and you're saying and posted.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
it does say posted for the September 22nd meeting, but I don't think people necessarily know when that, like when, just so people will know when they can go look.
Yep, got it. Athena, do you have that?
Yes.
Got it. Good catch. Anything else on this? Okay. I don't feel that this group is, well, I should say, I don't feel that 13 members of this group are 12 tonight. That excludes Jennifer and Irv. I personally don't have any knowledge that allows me to make any changes to the Amherst School Department description. I did ask a previous member of the committee to provide updates like when meetings were and so forth, and that's what you have before you. But if there are changes, please let me know. And Mandy Jo?
Just a couple of questions with it. Should we mention that I think it's 3 members of the Amherst School Committee are selected to be Union 26 members in that sort of second paragraph? Do we want to mention Union 26? I would leave it up to the school committee members to make that decision, but I thought since Union 26 might be doing a lot in this time period, it might be wise to mention that. The bullet points, there's an extra one. That second bullet point is just a hanging one. I think it should be deleted because it's part of the first bullet. And I had a question about that because I actually don't know. This all talks about in-person meetings. And so I just wonder if it should, I don't know whether the school committees are meeting solely in person or solely virtually or a hybrid method, but whatever method they're currently meeting should probably be listed within those bullet points. I just don't know what that correct listing is. Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer and Irv, perhaps you can answer. Let's let's go back to the form of meeting at this point.
Yeah, in terms of the Union 26, Union 26 is composed of 3 officers from Amherst School Committee and 3 officers from the Pelham School Committee. That's basically, and those officers are the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary.
Okay. Jennifer?
So I don't think it's necessary to call out Union 26 in this description. It is mentioned earlier, and it's true Union 26 is going to have a lot of work, but like everything Union 26 is going to do, the regional school committee is also going to do. So it's not necessarily extra work. So I think it's fine to leave that section the way it is. Regarding the bullets, so I would strike in the first bullet, I would strike or in the town room at town hall, because we don't meet there. And I would also strike the current meeting schedule is posted on the committee webpage, because it's not. So everything after and including or in the town room or town hall. Yeah.
Can we say meeting schedules are generally posted on the committee webpage?
Okay.
I mean, I realize they're not now because I went to look the other day.
Yeah, you can say generally. Meeting schedules are generally posted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you would also want to do the same for the next bullet point at the end, the current, change that sentence. I have a few more pieces of input once Athena's done with this.
Thank you. Just give us a little moment. So take out the word current in that sentence. Got it. Okay.
On the next page under duties, I want to add make or edit, I don't know, make hiring decisions regarding the superintendency or regarding the superintendent, because that's going to be something that maybe it's a new bullet point.
It says
hiring. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And then I think we should add the stipend. Just add that, like, according to the charter, Amherst school committee members receive a whatever stipend. It'll be, I assume it'll be prorated or whatever, but just add something about the stipend.
Yeah, I think that's a separate question. I think it's a separate paragraph or with one of the others, but not a bullet.
Yeah,
Because
it's not a duties. Yeah.
Not a specific duty. I've just put it at the very end. Amherst School Committee, per the charter, whatever it is, we'll find the citation. The Amherst School Committee members receive a stipend. I believe right now it's 3,000 and then 4,000 for the chair. Is that okay, Jennifer?
Yes, that looks fine.
Okay. All right. Other comments or questions? Irv.
Most of those things that you put down there up there are come almost directly from the policy manual in terms of the roles and responsibilities of the school committee member. So I'm totally comfortable with those, and they're part of our policy.
Okay. Do you think we should have a link to that policy?
I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, it all goes to board docs. So on board docs, there's a whole section on policies.
Okay, so it's in board docs.
Yes.
Okay, so we cite board docs up at the very beginning. Right there.
There you go.
All right, are there any other comments on the description? Okay, so I'm now going to just ask whether anybody feels we need to take a vote on any of this. Like, for example, do we need to take a vote to post the vacancy? Or do we just trust that tomorrow morning, Athena and I will make it happen? I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand. Believe me, we will make it happen. All right, then let me just say, this has been a very, very good discussion, and I really want to thank all the counselors and our 2 school committee members for making time for a special meeting for this very, very important discussion. And I want to note that from different times during the night, we'd had about 17 people in the audience, including a couple members of the press. We have reviewed the process, the timeline, the announcement, and the updated school committee description. I want to encourage you, as we have talked earlier today, to please forward all proposed interview questions to me. If you would like to CC Athena, that's always a good idea. And I would like to receive them no later than Tuesday, September 5th. There will be discussion at the meeting on the 11th and again on the 18th. We will meet as a town council along with the 2 remaining members of the Amherst School Committee on Tuesday, September 26th at 6:00 p.m., at which time we will interview the candidates who have submitted statements of interest and been verified by the town clerk as registered voters in the town of Amherst. If we're unable to complete the interview process and the voting, on September 26th, we will continue the meeting on Monday, October 2nd, 2023 at 6:00 p.m. Are there any questions about key dates or anything else? Okay, seeing none, I again just want to thank everybody from the council and the school committee. Kathy?
I just want to thank you, Lynn and Athena, for the enormous amount of work that you did to get us to tonight, because I saw the draft a week ago, which was just the old draft. So really thank you a lot. This is enormous. And I'm just trying to figure out how I mark up my calendar to capture all the dates, but thank you very much.
Thank you. And Athena and I jokingly thanked Erica Nakajima for actually resigning 2 terms ago because we had something to start with, and the select board before that. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned at 8:26. Thank you.